think I got it. Says we're live.
And recording.
Yay.
Is it 7 yet? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yep, it's 7.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call the city council meeting to order. It's March 23rd at 7 o'clock, and we're meeting by Zoom. First, we'll have the pledge of allegiance to the flag. The flag here, if you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence here. Okay, next roll call of council members.
Ms. Alt.
Here.
Mr. Bodkins.
Here.
Ms. Earlston.
Here.
Dr. Fellner.
Here.
Mr. Ivy.
Here.
Mr. Richard.
Here.
Mr. Triplett.
Present.
Okay, I'd like to note here that all 7 members are present again, and I see in papers and so forth, other council meetings around and how the quorum is, they barely meet in quorum a lot of times. So really thank all of you, because consistently we have all 7 members present. So thank you, great job. Next is roll call of elected officials and safety service director.
Mayor O'Leary.
Here.
Auditor Baldinger.
Here.
Director of Law Palmer.
Here.
Treasurer Sparks.
Again, thanks to all elected officials.
Just vote.
Safety Service Director Ward.
Okay, thank you for all being present too. Next is the minutes. You've all received a copy of the last meeting on the 9th. Are there any additions or corrections? If none, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 9th meetings.
Mr. Bodkins made the motion. Have a second?
Second that.
Second by Mr. Richards. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed likewise. The minutes of the February 9th meeting is approved as presented. We have one that we have to add to the agenda. The one that was added today is ordinance 2021-28. Do I have a motion to add that to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 2021-28 to the agenda.
Dr. Felder made the motion. To have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ivy seconded it. Roll call.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins.
Yes.
Ms. Earlston.
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Mr. Ivy.
Yes.
Mr. Richard.
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes.
Okay, the orders 2021-20 has been added to the agenda by a 7-0 vote. I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, motion by Mr. Triplett,
I'll
second
second that.
Mr. Bodkins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The agenda has been approved as amended. Moving on to legislation. First is ordinance 2021-22. It's a first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-22, entitled an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to apply for and accept a grant for fiscal year 2021 Federal Aviation Administration funds under the Airport Capital Improvement Program to be used to rehabilitate runway 5/23 at the Gallia Municipal Airport and declaring an emergency.
You heard the reading ordinance. Discussion, question, Dr. Fellner?
Yes, this ordinance came through Economic Development and Airport, and it is yet another FAA grant. Ms. Ward did a great job of explaining the monies involved. So I'd like to turn that over to her, please.
Nikki?
Fellner, yep. So this is our FAA grant project for the year. This is a rehabilitation of the runway. It's a $1.2 million project. The city's portion of that is $62,205. So $30,000 of that will be from last year's CARES dollars, and then we budgeted for the remainder for this year. This is just approving us to submit the final application. We have submitted a pre-application just to let them know we have a project in the works, but this would allow us to go ahead with the actual application.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Deadline on this, Ms. Ward?
Yeah,
As soon as possible.
Okay,
We had a conference call late last week, and they're looking for us to get everything finalized.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Miss Ward, this is is this one of the program's the wrong word to use, but this is kind of in the works as a series of improvements and such that come down the road. for
Yes,
the
this was part of the 10-year capital improvements plan. Apparently, the FAA had a bunch of money left over. And so this was actually scheduled for, I think, 2024, but asked us if we would be interested in moving it up because they had all of this extra money. So given the fact we had $30,000 in CARES funds and we were basically ready to roll with the project, we took advantage of that.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Um,
Any other
If
questions?
there aren't any other questions or comments, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to the final reading on ordinance 2021-22.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner, suspend the rules. A second.
I will second the motion.
Mrs. Earlston seconded it. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
yes,
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-22 is passed by a 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-21.
Okay.
Thank
here's
you.
Triplett.
22, sorry.
What was that last?
He
Seconded by
said 21 is 22.
22. Yeah, okay, excuse me.
I'll second.
Mr. Ivy seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. President, let me jump in real quick. The CARES dollars are CARES dollars that come through FAA. So they're not if you will, the city of Gallion's CARES dollars that could be used for other purposes. So this is using some money that has been pushed out. So I just wanted to mention that it's not that we're putting $33,000 that could go to something else.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for clarifying that, Tom.
Yeah, it's not even, I didn't mean it in that way, but anyways, because we, over the next month or so, we'll be talking about quite a bit of CARES dollars. And I wanted to distinguish those, this is money from FAA to do exactly this, kind of pick up the local match, if you will. So anyway,
And just to
Thank you.
piggyback
Thank-
on that, by the way, we did get another $9,000 in FAA CARES money this year as well. So we can put that toward our portion as well.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Other discussion? We have a motion, don't we, on the floor?
Yeah, a motion and a second. Yep.
Okay, if no other discussion, roll call?
Mr. Triplett,
Yes,
Mr. Ivy,
Yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance 2021-22 is passed by a 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance 2021-23, this is first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-23, entitled ordinance authorizing the safety service director to enter into an agreement with Richland Engineering Limited for engineering design services relating to the FAA fiscal year 21 grant funded runway rehabilitation at the airport and declaring an emergency.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the ordinance, discussion. Dr. Fellner?
Yes, this also came through Economic Development and Airport Committee, and it directly ties into the previous ordinance. This is the engineering aspect of the project. Again, I'm going to turn to Ms. Ward because I think she had some information about that we're able to roll the cost of this into the grant, but I'll let her clarify that.
Thanks, Dr. Fellner. The amount of this contract is actually factored into the $1.2 million for the project. So it's already been earmarked for that, but we need a separate contract with Richland Engineering for the engineering itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion?
Mr. President, if there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for this ordinance 2021-23.
Heard the motion by Mr. Richards to suspend the rules on this ordinance. Do I have a-
Second.
Mr. Ivy seconded it. Roll call.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes,
Motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-23 is passed by a 7-0 vote. Not discussion on the ordinance.
Mr.
Yes.
President, I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-23.
Heard the motion by Mr. Ivy. Do we have a second?
Watkins?
Mr. Bodkin seconded. Further discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Okay. Was that yes too? Okay. Ordinance 2021-23 is passed by a 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance 2021-24, first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-24, an ordinance authorizing the safety service director to apply for and enter into a water supply revolving loan account WSRLA agreement with Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, OEPA, and the Ohio Water Development Authority, OWDA, to obtain funding to establish an OEPA-approved general plan to guide future plant and system improvements and declaring an emergency.
Heard the reading of these ordinance, discussion. Went through
Yeah.
committee.
yes, this came also through, I believe, finance, if I'm not mistaken. And again, for the third time in a row, I'm going to turn to Ms. Ward for an explanation because it says Safety Service Director.
Thank you for the third time, Dr. Fellner. This is an application to apply for a grant through the EPA for a general plan for the water system. They have monies available to help us get basically a long-term capital improvements plan together for not only the plant, but the reservoirs and the entire distribution system. So we reached out to 3 engineering firms that we've used in the past and gathered 3 quotes. And we used the number of the highest quote just, to make sure we could cover it. So I think it's $28,500. We may or may not follow through on applying, but we want to have that option. This loan amount could be rolled into any project we do. So we wouldn't have, a $28,500 loan hanging out there. It would be rolled into the first project that we would pick from that general plan.
Thank you. Other questions?
Is this something that we've done in the past?
Actually, it's not. Jaime Mendoza, our new water superintendent, is really familiar with funding sources when it comes to the water system. So he's the one that suggested this might be something that we have on hand in case we want to go ahead and take advantage of that. We do have to have this general plan in place before we would be eligible to apply for any what I'll call real money from the EPA. So if we were to request grants or loans from them for plant improvements, distribution improvements, repairs at the reservoir, we would have to have this plan in place to show them that we're approaching all of this systematically and not just sort of drawing things from a hat.
Thank
Great.
you. Mr. Triplett?
Would this money be interest-free, Nikki, if we'd have borrowed it?
There are two pots, Mark. One of them is 0%, which is the one I think will qualify for. The other one is 0.6%. If we attach this somehow to it, the harmful algal blooms, it would be 0.6%. But I think under the I'm trying to think of the word. If you're a small community with under a median income and so forth, we would qualify for 0%.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yep, sure.
Other questions?
Nikki, is there a time frame on this?
This is the actual application would be due by May 2nd.
Is there any reason not to suspend the rules and move forward with this if we're going to do it?
To make that motion. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Doc. You got it.
Like to make a motion, go ahead and suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-24 and proceed to the final reading.
Read the motion, suspend the rules by Dr. Fellner. We have a second.
Second.
Mr. Richards seconded. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes,
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy.
yes,
Motion to suspend the rules of this ordinance passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-24.
Read the motion by Mr. Triplett.
I'll
Have a
second that.
Mr. Bodkin seconded it. Discussion and roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-24 is passed by 7-0 vote. Move on to ordinance 2021-25, first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-25, entitled ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-92, permanent 2021 appropriations by appropriating, reducing appropriations, and transferring funds in various funds and declaring an emergency.
Any discussion on this ordinance?
Yes, this came through finance, and Ms. Colleen, I thought I had it memorized, but I would like you to please go through each section if you would.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Fellner. Just to kind of go through this section by section as we usually do. Section number 2 is to appropriate some money into unclaimed funds. We normally don't appropriate into this on an annual basis. However, April in our office has sent out over 300 letters to individuals that we're trying to contact regarding unclaimed funds with the city, whether it is utility money that was deposited and we issued them a check and the check was never cashed, or it was returned, could have been lost in the mail, anything like that. So we're making an effort to contact those people to get funds back to them. Nothing has been done with this for several years, so this is a pretty big effort to try and get some of those funds back. Anything that is not able to be returned to the individuals will be redistributed back to the funds where they came from. But at this point, we just need to appropriate some money to be able to expend and pay the people that do contact us to get their money. Section 3, we did not appropriate any money into 901 for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. There is cash in there. That's where part of the bed tax is going to. I had just been paying them off of a previous year PO. So we need to appropriate some funds to be able to continue paying them throughout the year. Section 4, 5, and 6, you will see the exact same amount repeated in all three of these sections because it's all tied together. So there is a balance left in Fund 625, which was the Electric Improvement Fund. Section 4 of this ordinance appropriates money that has not been appropriated. We're appropriating the entire balance. That's why you see some odd cents there, but we're appropriating the entire balance into a transfer fund in 625. Section 5 then moves that money from 625 into a revenue fund in 605 because we pay our debt from 605 and we want to use the balance that's in there to pay off some of the debt for the electric improvements. With that money being part of notes that we took, it has to be paid on a qualifying project, and paying the debt down would be permissible per our bond counsel. Section 6 then appropriates that cash into the expense line so that we will be able to pay down on that debt when we go to roll that over. Section 7 is a reduction in the budget. We over appropriated in 405 being the freeze fund. So we need to reduce the expenditures in there so that we're in compliance with our amended certificate. And we don't have what was budgeted in there. We do not have projects for that amount. So we definitely need to reduce that. Section 8, this is for the Port Authority. The money was budgeted in 101, so this is just transferring it into 409 so that I can make the payment to the Port Authority for the year. We already have a purchase order and everything in place, so this is again just moving the cash into that fund. And this is all needs to be done by the end of the month, so I would request that this be done as an emergency.
Thank you. Discussion, questions?
Eunice, are you gonna leave 625 or is that gonna be gone?
625 will stay there in case we have any future projects, but it will show a zero balance. As long as there is money in there, it earns interest. And so the state auditors actually a couple years ago wanted us to get that money out of there. We just weren't sure what we were going to do with it. And we've decided just to use it to pay the debt down at this point so that I need to zero that out so that it'll quit drawing the interest and we'll be ready to pay the debt. The fund
Okay,
itself
thanks.
will still
I
stay.
think that's a good idea to do that too.
Anything else?
Hey, quickly on that one, on, if I might, on the, that started out as, that extra money, if you will, was a result of getting particularly good bids on that last bit of upgrade. So the debt had been issued and we let that last contract, it came in a little bit low. There were no significant change orders. So that's how, you know, how did we have that money in to begin with, is that a little bit too much debt was issued. So we're going to put it back into 605 and pay off some of the longstanding debt.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mr. President, I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and move 2021-25 on for a final vote.
You've heard the motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Ivy. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
motion.
Mr. Richard seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes,
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-25 is passed by 7-0 vote. Discussion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to pass 2021-25.
The motion by Mr. Triplett, seconded by
I'll second that.
Mr. Richards, seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
yes,
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy.
yes,
Okay, ordinance 2021-25 is passed by 7-0 vote. Next is ordinance 2021-26, its first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-26 entitled an ordinance establishing the Urban Paving Fund 418 and declaring an emergency.
Questions on this ordinance? Discussion?
This came through Finance Committee, and once again, I'm gonna ask Ms. Colleen to explain it.
Thank you, Dr. Fellner. This is a bit of housekeeping as requested by the State Auditor's Office. We previously had an urban paving fund that was 409. That was inadvertently changed over to the Port Authority at some point. So we needed to reestablish an urban paving fund. Part of this is in preparation as we prepare our gap reports. So the state auditors requested that we get this set up. There will be more legislation down the road as we move forward in moving funds within 418, but we at least needed to get the fund established to be able to set up the other accounts.
Other questions? We have a motion to suspend the rules on this to get this account set up.
To make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-26 and proceed to the final reading.
You've
I'll
heard the
second.
motion, Mrs. Earlston, roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
yes,
Mr. Ivy,
yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
yes,
Mr. Bodkins.
Yes.
Okay, motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-26 is passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-26.
You've heard the motion by Mr. Triplett. Do we have a second?
Second, Bodkins.
Mr. Bodkin seconded. Discussion? None, roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
yes,
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
yes,
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
yes,
Ordinance 2021-26 is passed by 7-0 vote. Next ordinance 2021-27, first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-27 entitled ordinance repealing ordinance 2020-15 and to now adopt a credit card policy for the city of Galion.
Thank you. Discussion on this ordinance.
Yes, this came through Finance Committee. This is an ordinance repealing the ordinance passed last year that regarding our credit card policy. As you recall, it went several readings, and the original ordinance was voted down 4-3. Part of the issues were the accountability and the risk involved with inadvertent charges. And the other issue was, and this ordinance also is going to name a compliance officer for that. Again, I'm going to, Gail, do you want to take this, please?
Yeah, I'll take it here. I'll start with it, and then if Eunice has something later on, she can chime in here.
Great.
Yeah, Phil Jackson came to me when this credit card policy was passed last March. It had a $5,000 cap on it, and that forced not the closure of the Lowe's credit card, but the suspension of use of it because it was already over the $5,000 limit. And so that's been, the use of that's been suspended for the whole last year. And Phil has a project coming up that Phil wants to do a remodel in the kitchen there, and he needs to buy materials, and he's not able to buy materials because the credit card policy is not allowing him to charge anything on that card currently. And then the other thing is he has a license coming due. I believe it's, oh gosh, I think it's
July 1st.
May. When?
July 1st.
July 1st, okay. Yeah, he's got a license coming due July 1st that for medical, and they only will take a credit card. They will not take any other form of payment. So without this credit card policy, he would not be able to buy certain medical supplies, oxygen, things like that, because he would have to put it on a credit card. So as time goes on, more and more issues arise where we can only pay by credit card. So it's really necessary to get this thing put in place, and we're really going to need this passed as probably as an emergency, because we're going to have to set up the account, and that's going to take a little bit of time. That needs to be in place so he can start making them purchases in July.
Yeah. Other discussion?
Eunice, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I see Mark raising his hand as well, but I do want to note just a couple of things. Training is another big thing that requires credit cards. I just issued reimbursement to an employee for over $500 that they fronted themselves personally, that we are reimbursing. So it is happening more and more. I had 2 other pay requests come in for training as well that was put on personal credit cards. This just kind of recap a little bit from before. This was prepared in accordance with the State Auditor's Bulletin 2018-003. It was modeled after that policy. The spending authority that council gives with appropriations cannot be exceeded even with the credit cards. So that's kind of a very broad checkpoint that's in place. But we have much tighter, stricter ones with the bank and the bank software, as well as our software in our office. With so many going to credit cards and credit card payments, the software has added things in that we can run specific credit card reports. When we enter a payment, we note if it is for a credit card and things like that, for example. We also, some of our debt payments and stuff are all going to electronic in one form or another. So those are just some other things that are showing more of a pressing need for this.
Thank you. Mr. Triplett.
Okay, this goes back to a discussion we had a couple years ago. Is there going to be one card, or is there going to be a whole shitload of cards out there for people to use?
There will be multiple cards that will be issued and assigned to specific departments.
Okay, why couldn't the city, why can't you guys keep the cards? If they need to spend money on that card, why can't they come to the auditor's office to use a card?
We do have some departments that are 24/7 operations. Our office is not open 24/7. In an emergency situation, which is one big main reason to have the cards, we may not always be available to run into our office to get them a credit card to be able to go do things.
Mrs. Earlston?
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Eunice, but there will be a cap on every card that's issued, correct? Like nobody could just take a card and go crazy. There's a limit on what they could spend on each card that's distributed, correct?
Correct. And there's not only a limit on, like each card can be customized to different limits that can be changed if needed in urgent situations, but also restrictions can be put on it like as to what type of store or business the cards can be used in. As you know, in the policy, there are allowable expenditures and ones that are prohibited, but you can even control those with on the bank level that, you know, where you can and can't, you can block, like, I don't want to name any stores or anything specifically, but you can name by store or something that, you know, they cannot be used there. So it would restrict them being able to use them in any violation of the policy.
Mr. Abbey? Mr. Abbey?
Yeah, Eunice, how many cards are we looking at, do you think overall, spread over how many departments?
I haven't really discussed that with Gail. I think when we had talked about it before, for some reason 10 is sticking out in my head, but please don't hold me to that because I would have to go back through all of my notes and revisit that.
And would you say it's a fair statement that there were additional safeguards that are placed on these proposed cards versus cards in the past?
I'm not familiar with cards in the past at all. That was before my time.
Okay.
I will say.
Well, I'm sorry, Eunice. Let me rephrase the question. There is a lot more safeguards in 2021 with the use of these cards above and beyond just, you know, I'm sure the fire department won't be able to go to a local vape shop and buy cigarettes and things that, you know what I'm saying, without
Right.
naming stores, but there's a lot more additional safety, a lot more additional safeguards, not just placed on by us, but by the banks as well. Is that what you were kind of mentioning that in our committee meeting?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr.
Carl? Hey, Carl?
Yes.
It's my understanding, and that the initial credit card would probably be given to the supervisor of each department. And then he would issue the card as necessary. Like the police chief would be in control of it. The fire chief would be in control. All the department supervisors would be in control of their card. And the card would, then if chief wasn't on duty, he could actually leave the card available for the officer on duty if an emergency would arise, like say the fuel pumps out back went down and they need to get gas in the cruisers. The officer in charge could then take that card and go to a filling station and get some gas until we get the fuel pumps back up and running. And then also when that card is used, it also triggers notification to that supervisor that the card has been used. So that supervisor is going to know immediately when the card has been used.
That was the additional safeguard I was alluding to.
As will
That I
our
couldn't remember.
as well.
There's no way, Gail, that they can know immediately if that card was used unless they're sitting at their computer all the time.
It can be set up by email or text. I know that even like with my personal credit card, if I swipe it, my husband immediately gets a text that I've swiped the credit card.
Yeah, mine's the same way.
Mine
I
has one.
use it.
You
I'm
know,
standing right there at the register and my phone goes off immediately, telling me that somebody's using my card.
I understand more and more places take a credit card, but do you think we actually need one for every department? I mean, if the city, there's going to be, they're all, oh,
Which departments would need a credit card? Fire, police, health department? I mean, which departments do we think off the top of our heads?
We got the water treatment plant, we got the sewage plant. They all take courses and licensing that are requiring credit card payment now, or they need to go to training somewhere and they need to go to the training facilities. And if we're running a city vehicle and the city vehicle goes down, they got to make emergency repairs, or if they need to charge motels, whatever have you, that would go along, any expense that would go along with a training course for their job. So just about every department has some sort of training. I don't know if any department don't have training. We're constantly approving people to use their personal credit cards, and I really don't like that because people get incentives and money back on the use of their credit card, and we have no way of knowing who's got those kinds of credit cards, and that's a big red flag at the state level when people start benefiting by charging city business on their card and then getting a benefit in return.
It is an audit issue and we are questioned about it every year.
So why can't, so if I may, why can't we get credit cards for those departments that are open 24 hours a day, and the ones that are open during normal business hours can come up to the auditor's office and get one credit card to use? That would limit from
do
10
you
down
do?
to how many?
What do you do when that credit card is in Columbus or wherever? Because an employee came and got it and took our only credit card down to Columbus to a class and we need it for somebody else. That's why each department really needs to have their own credit limit set up that revolves around what they will be doing with their card. And because one card is just not going to work because we got multiple departments that could be using that card at the same time, and if that thing's out of town, then somebody's just going to be out of luck. So I don't see that working.
Mr. Watkins?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious about, maybe we should try this on a temporary basis if the auditor or Eunice maybe could come up with a time element and just monitor this for 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months, and see how it works before we say no to everything. Everything I do today is a credit card, everything. You just can't get done without it. So maybe a temporary, and just look it over and see what you think and bring it back to council if we have to and say this didn't work.
Well, we got, like I said, Phil Jackson's got licensing that's it's coming due July 1st. And he's got to get that done or his squad is basically out of business.
I didn't say to shut it down, Gail. I said, just try it.
I know what you said, Ken.
Okay. I didn't know if you
but
try it and see how it works. That's all right.
The department has to renew the same pharmacy license that the fire department does. If that pharmacy license isn't renewed, they can't do anything but give out Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Ms. Alt?
I have a couple of questions. Do you know what bank is going to be issuing the credit cards?
We looked at multiple ones, and Park National Bank has one that's called an Ellen card. And that's the one that has the most controls and features that we liked on it. And one more real quick thing, Kara, that I want to note, I can also give you guys as the credit card policy notes, when I send out the monthly financial reports, I can give you guys a credit card report as well so that you can see all the credit card transactions month by month as well.
Okay, and then a couple more. Would this be paid off like a charge card or would it accrue interest? Are you going to have enough money to pay the bill month to month? Is it going to be appropriating funds? How's the payment on the card going to look?
We, as a government entity, we are not allowed to pay interest. It has to be paid off every month. And so back to what I was saying with what you guys authorize as spending authority with the appropriations, those departments are going to be responsible for making sure that that money is in place when the card is used.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How are you going to track it with the budgets that they give you? Like if fire has in their budget for a $20,000 renovation and they spend $24,000, what's that going to look like on your end for all of that monitoring and kind of ledger work?
They still have to prepare purchase orders. So just like we do all the other purchases that, and I'm sorry, Carrie, I realize you're newer. So when a department puts in a requisition for a purchase order, it has an approval process that it goes through in our software. So it's a department head enters it, it's electronically then forwarded and submitted to the service safety director. It then goes to the auditor and then to me for the purchase order to be issued. So the payment to the credit card will still be done with a purchase order.
Okay. And I guess I was just thinking about like that emergency stuff, but I guess that the departments probably have that accounted for in their individual budgets. Thank you for answering those questions.
Good question.
Yeah, one last thing I'd like to put out there for council is, I have the policy up in the office, printed out. There is a credit card policy that spells out just exactly answers a lot of these questions. So if any of the councilmen would like to stop in, we could probably run a copy of that credit card policy.
I think it's attached to their,
It's
It's-
attached to the agenda.
Yeah, there's a separate policy and procedure that I was reading through. I don't have it with me here, but it's in the computer there in my office. But we can print off copies to any of the councilmen that want to see that. But the compliance officers automatically in there required to report back monthly expenditures on the credit card.
I think one thing we need to consider is that some of you on council probably remember back, there was abuse of credit cards back over 15 years ago. But this 2021 and the demand for the payments of credit cards and so forth is a whole different ballgame today. So I think something has to be done, whatever you decide, or we're not going to get these bills paid. So take that into consideration too.
Mr. President, may I make a comment and ask a couple of questions, please?
Yes, go ahead.
With reference to travel, and I know you don't probably have that in front of you, but because I see a lot of the travel that's not related to the health department, this issue of travel, is that where you have the reimbursement issue? Where's that at, Gail or Eunice? In what departments?
Well, Nikki came to us with two courses that she and I think it was Doug Bagley has to attend, and I think it's like $300 a person. She asked for prior authorization as a one-time charge on her credit card so they can attend this course. And I don't know exactly when that course takes place, but I went ahead and approved it. But I also told her this would be coming out, that we would be trying to get this credit card policy through. So anything like that and that would come through could come through a city card, not a personal card. And also, I don't think that every time somebody travels, they will have to use a credit card. I think there's a lot of times yet that they could still go through the regular process and we could pay for it in advance by check or whatever. But it's just becoming more and more every year that people aren't accepting these check payments. They want electronic payment.
I just wanted to sort of try to sort out and figure out where the travel, to the extent that travel requests and that kind of reimbursement is something we need to improve on. If there's, if it's really only Nikki and one other case, that doesn't seem like it's a huge problem. So I was trying to
We haven't
identify.
had a whole lot of travel. I think Nikki's the only one that's got travel going on right now. But the other one, the big one, is Phil in the fire department not being able to purchase his licensing any other way than by electronic method. So
Right.
the health department, I think the health department falls in there too. They got the same licensing coming due. That's so they can administer a lot of their stuff.
So how is that? Just to ask, I got one other question, Carl. How much of this travel and the health department, are they a group that would frequently use this? And would this policy apply to any credit card use they have?
Yeah, that's something we're gonna have to work through, Mayor, because I just don't know all the particulars, since the health department's actually an entity of their own. Even though they are funded by us,
Right.
but they're kind of on their own. So yeah, we're gonna have to work through that to see where they fall with the credit card on that.
Thank you, Gail. I would add the comment now. I would say that a credit card for every department is something that it's not something that came from the service director, or the mayor. While council may want to change the policy, I think each department head having a credit card is probably, I want to work on that. I would see perhaps fewer card numbers and a tighter oversight from the service director. Thanks.
Anybody else questions?
I would like to clarify just a couple of things real quick, if I could. The health department, Gail's right, that's something that we have to work on, but we pay their bills. So if they had a credit card, we would be paying those. So that kind of brings things together as far as that goes. On the travel, we've had several other departments that have had instances. What pops right into my mind is the police department, whether it's their school resource officer training, the canine training. We run into a lot of issues with that. Most hotels, if they're going to stay in a hotel, they want the check in hand at least 2 weeks ahead of time, because they of course want to make sure that the check clears the bank prior to the stay occurring. We've ran into issues where if we've issued that check ahead of time and then something comes up like with the pandemic or the class is canceled, now we have to wait to get the money back. And we've had some real challenges with some of the hotels in getting our money refunded when we've advanced that money. So that's created some challenges. And just those are a lot that sometimes they maybe don't know far enough ahead of time for us to be able to cut the check to get it to them in time, because you're relying then on the mail and everything else to get it to them before the employee needs to be there.
Anybody else have any comments?
Carl,
Yes.
so I had a couple of questions. Eunice, I'm just curious, where have you seen the biggest demand from the various departments for a credit card use?
October.
That's kind of hard to gauge, because like Gail said, every department does training and stuff. I'm trying to think of a department that's been exempt from it. As far as the biggest demand, it's probably police and fire.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked the question was I have to agree with the mayor. I think that in regard of not having every department have a card necessarily, I think that possibly, given the current state that we now are getting into, is certain departments that would possibly need that ability would be as opposed to having everybody have, you know what I'm saying? You got key ones, like you said, the fire department, the police department, possibly wastewater, water treatment, then having subsequent, any of the other departments, if they need them, they could take and come to the auditor's office and go through securing a card at that point. I don't know if that's, again, I'm trying to I don't like the idea of having a bunch of cards at all the departments, because not that I don't trust them or anything like this, but that's a lot of cards.
Right. And that's fine. I understand that. And however you guys want to do it is fine. Also, just another note, anybody that uses the card has to sign the user acknowledgement form that is a part of the policy as well. So just another, thing that I wanted to point out.
Mrs.
What's
Earlston.
your compliance officer going to be?
That's
Section
con-
4, Mark,
that's
look at section 4. Council is going to appoint the compliance officer.
I was just gonna point out a couple things. One, Eunice, your story about the hotel sounds like a complete nightmare. And my question kind of is there any department that doesn't travel, that doesn't have to at some point go to a training or where they have to book a hotel? I guess that's to Eunice.
In the time that I've been there. Put me on the spot. I'm really trying to think.
I was just thinking that probably just about every department has at some point to go to some kind of a training or something.
I
Yep,
don't know.
even
I
even
don't
I
know
have
if the
training.
service department has done a hotel, but they do training.
So they have to travel.
Require a credit card.
And then two other points. One, that each credit card is going to have a limit on it. So there's no way that anybody could, one, go spend, an exorbitant amount of money because the card won't work. It won't work in certain stores that department, so they couldn't possibly use it, in a negative way at a store that it doesn't benefit them. And then three, just like my credit card, if it's swiped, it alerts my phone. So I would think there would be probably quite a few people that would be aware whenever it was used. And like you said, a purchase order would still need to be filled out prior to, correct? I mean, I just kind of am saying these things, but I want to make sure that I am repeating correctly all of the safeguards that you've pointed out.
Correct. The purchase order should be in place prior to. However, if there is an emergency situation, it still needs to be within budget, but that's where you have the then and now.
And also the limit on the card, and only on in an emergency that would have to be more, that would have to get pre-approved or, somehow changed because they can't spend over what's on the card.
Right. Only the compliance officer or someone in our office would be allowed to increase that limit. So if we wanted to go with, like Mike was saying, and maybe just give police and fire a credit card to the chiefs for them to be able to authorize and issue. I don't know if we would do water and wastewater since they're around the clock operations more than we are. And then just maybe we kept more than one in our office in the safe in case there was a situation like Gail was saying, that we signed one out to the service department to go to training, and then the line department needed to go to training. We could do something like that. If we did do a credit card to each department, we could, so like maybe building and zoning would not have that big of a need. We could have $100 limit on that credit card. And then if I realize what everybody's thinking is that doesn't cover a hotel. So then if he had to go to training, we could increase that limit just for 1 or 2 months and then back that limit back down, once the need was no longer there. So there's different controls, like I was saying, that gives us a little bit of flexibility to control that.
I just feel like we've been discussing this a lot. I know that there are a lot of city workers that are putting all kinds of things on their credit cards. And I know that makes us not in compliance with the state. I mean, Zoom, I know that's been put on people's credit cards. And like Gail was saying, that making money off of city business. And I just feel like we're past time to move this forward and make this happen, because one, it's going to save the city money, and two, it'll put us in compliance with the state. So I just think it's time for us to move forward with this.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Ivy.
And not to mention that if people are putting front ending on their own credit card, they are responsible for paying interest on that on their own personal cards, even when they do get reimbursed.
Other questions?
If we were to do something like Ken Bodkin suggested and trying it, I did print out, I don't know that you would see them that well, but I did do some screenshots like from our software and how it controls it. But if, we've got to do something for the pharmacy license. We've got to, or somebody's going to put it on their own credit card one way or another, but that's going to be several $100s. It's like $500, and the health department's going to be in the same boat. But if we did it as a trial, I've always said, if anybody wants to come in and sit down and see this and go through it, I will take the time to do that so that I can answer any questions and you can see for yourselves. Vicki Martin, who I've dealt with at the bank, would be happy to talk to anybody. Whatever we can do to answer questions.
Hey, Eunice,
Yes.
I know you've been in contact with Vicki. I haven't had the opportunity to speak with her much about this, but does each credit card, would it be linked to their budget somehow or another, to their, I don't know how I want to ask that,
The only, I think I know
linked to
what,
their department for, because of their credit card limit being different? Would it, I mean, when it comes time to pay that, you're paying for it out of their budget. Now, is there any links, that card to their budget?
it wouldn't through the bank, but I have also since we haven't went through it, there is in our software, you set up credit card vendors, even in our software. So I don't know, since I haven't went through the steps for this, I don't know how it connects it. It wouldn't connect it through the bank. So,
Okay.
like I say, it would be more of us, like if somebody came to me and wanted to increase their credit limit, the first thing I'm going to do is look at the appropriations and see if they've got the money to cover it.
Correct. Yeah.
But Carl,
Yes.
Gail,
There, go ahead.
now, you could, if you didn't have it in your budget, you could go out and spend, it's a different limit on the credit card. So you could create a then and now. That's one of the operational things that we'd want to talk about if we make a decision to change. So you could go spend more on a credit card in a particular department than there was money in the appropriation to support.
Well,
They
we
aren't,
would set the credit limit that high.
pardon me?
I don't, why we wouldn't set the credit limit that high to be over their appropriations.
What I'm saying is if you have $1,000 in training and somebody incurs $1,200 in training expense, the credit card's gonna probably accept $1,200, but you're gonna have a then and now on the back end that you're gonna have to adjust money in to make that credit card approved purchase supported in the appropriation. It's not the end of the world.
No, no.
What I was asking earlier. That's maybe a better way to ask what I was trying to say earlier.
But then,
It's my understanding though, that they wouldn't be able to do that because their credit card wouldn't be over what, right? You would set the credit card limit so they couldn't go over what has been appropriated, correct?
Again,
he's
let me-
talking about a particular line, not the overall total appropriation. So if
Gotcha.
they're paying for
Okay,
training,
okay.
And there's
in
only a training line.
On- November. We do so little training. I guess I don't want to spend a whole heck of a lot more time on it. Training is, of any organization I've been involved in, that is not a very large priority in our budget. In fact, we were talking about that, the need to emphasize training in the police department today. But this emphasis on all the training, that will happen. You could just as easily have that happen in one of the items where you would, let's say, go to Lowe's and buy a certain amount of lumber, a certain amount of PVC pipe. You could buy more than was in the appropriation. You could do that. And that then and now would happen. It's not the end of the world, I don't think, but that could happen. The credit card would accept it, but the appropriation would be exceeded, and then council on the back end and have to do a then and now and a transfer in to make that good. It'll mostly happen towards the end of the year when you're running out of cash in just about every line item in the budget. So
But
it's just,
Eunice also mentioned that they gotta apply and go through the purchase order process also. So without a purchase order, they would not be in compliance with the credit card. And then they would be subject to disciplinary action at that point.
you're absolutely right about that, Gail, and there's no denying that. I really, I think that could be easily managed if you don't issue credit cards to each department. So I think, not even sure this evening, you select which, I think everyone works for the service director that we're talking about. So the police chief going out to buy something, the fire chief going out to buy something without talking to the service director is probably something we want to manage closely and not have that spending in each one of our departments. But that's probably a detail more than it is a decision about council if you know, in terms of changing the credit card policy.
Yeah.
The ordinance says there'll be a credit card issued to each department head. Is there?
No,
So,
And as far as the then and now, just remember, if I'm a firefighter and I go to Lowe's and get some stuff, as soon as I swipe that card, chief's gonna get a text message or an email, and then he's gonna know that he's gotta have that purchase order or whatever in his budget ready to go if he didn't already.
yeah. I don't anticipate a lot of problems, but you could run into that sort of, pardon me for that phone ringing. You want to iron that out before we get going. And I think the fewer cards we have in the management control of the service director is probably a good way to put this into practice.
Yeah, Mrs. Earlston?
I just would like to add that if we, can't trust all of our department heads to handle this kind of a situation, then maybe we need to be looking more at who's running our departments. I think, hopefully we have people that are, the heads of the departments that can manage something like this and everything. And like Ken was saying, reevaluate it and see how things are going in a few months. But again, I think it's time to move forward.
Title of that opinion, I would just say that the administration, the mayor and service director, really not initiating this. So I don't think that's an indication of whether we trust these individuals or not. It's just not something that, we've initiated. We'll live with the council's outcome, but I don't agree with you, Ms. Searlston, that any comment is somehow suggesting we don't trust our managers.
No, I'm not saying that the comments are implying that at all. I'm just saying that in general, I would hope that we would feel confident in our department heads. I'm not implying that that's what anybody's suggesting, so I don't want you to take it that way, but I just want to say that I hope that we have enough confidence in our department heads that they could handle this well.
Mr. Triplett?
Okay, LLC Thomas, this is a question for you. Okay, on the last credit card policy, I remember we did not completely get rid of it, correct?
there is a credit card policy in place.
Okay, I know there was an issue with it. So what are we voting on tonight to repeal that one?
Yes. You're
And
repealing, and that's Exhibit A, and then you're adopting Exhibit B, which is the new proposed credit card policy.
okay, and the new one is the compliance officer, not the other one that they had a choice of back in 18.
The new one has a compliance officer, is chosen by council.
And we will do that as a separate, so it can be changed. We'll do that as a separate resolution or ordinance. This is not named in this particular.
It also removes the $5,000 cap on there.
Yeah,
That's true too.
yeah, that was the problem with the previous.
That
one.
was the problem with the policy we have in place, the $5,000 cap.
So if we vote this credit card policy, then we're not actually saying every department's going to get a card. This is something that's got to be worked out in the auditor's office. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. If you'll look at the top of page 2, it says the auditor shall maintain the number of cards and accounts issued. So the bottom line is the auditor that chooses who gets cards. So there's nothing in the policy that says that each department head shall get a card.
Okay, thanks. That would have saved us a whole bunch of time, Thank you.
Sure.
Other discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I agree with Mark that looks like that's, and it's been a good discussion, which it should be, but obviously we need something in place. My real quick question to Eunice is, we do have a policy in place now, but it is flawed because of the credit limit, or how is it flawed?
It did not work with the credit limit with all of the charge accounts with Lowe's and what the structure of the Park National credit card that we wanted to go with.
Okay.
I can't recall because I didn't comb through very finely, but I don't know if there was an issue with the state auditor's bulletin on it or not. But it didn't work with, they did not connect, I guess, if you will, or mesh.
Okay, then the other thing was the compliance officer, if I remember correctly, that was come from the state. Am I right on that? Or am I incorrect on that?
I believe that it's noted in the state auditor's bulletin that I mentioned.
Okay,
Eunice is absolutely right. It's a creature of the state auditor's office, their policies.
nicely worded. Well, given that, I would say, so we can at least have somebody's going to say something, I'm sorry. What I was getting ready to say was, as it appears we need something more than what we currently have, and I agree with Mr. Bodkins that we should use this at a trial basis. I'm going to make a motion that we suspend the rules on this ordinance, and I got to get to the ordinance first. 2021-27 and move it to the final reading.
And I will second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Richards, second by Mrs. Earlston. Roll call.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Can I ask a question, or do we just vote now?
We're voting now.
You're voting on suspending the rules right now. You're not voting on the ordinance officially yet.
Murphy, what's the
No
matter?
discussion at this point.
Yeah, no discussion. Sorry. You can ask after this, Mark. So,
Your vote, Mr. Triplett, one way or the other?
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Okay, motion to suspend the rules is passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion. Mr. Triplett.
Okay, now I got a question. So if we're just voting on a policy, then this is going to be the administration's final say on how this policy is run, correct?
We will have to run it by what the policy itself says. And like I said, the compliance officer is mandated to report to council all expenditures, number of cards. I just don't remember what all's listed in there now, but that compliance officer reports back to council on a monthly basis.
No, I understand all that, Gail. What I'm saying is, who's going to determine how many cards are out floating in the air and all that?
Gail,
It's the auditor.
the auditor, per the
Okay.
policy.
Think careful. I remember how you voted before.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that, but Mr. President, it is clearly council is going to pick the compliance officer.
Mhm.
The administration has no real position in this, the way you're getting ready to pass it. The auditor will decide which of employees who report to Nikki will be given the cards. And then depending on council's decision, whether or not you would pick the obvious choices. If someone said, gee, Mayor, who should be the compliance officer? I would say, given this ordinance, it clearly should be the service director. But if you made that compliance officer in the auditor's office, then you really wouldn't have a check and balance on that. So I think it'll be real important when it comes to that appointment, if this passes. So anyways, I think that answers your question, Mark. The administration, so to speak, is really not part of this ordinance unless they're included in the compliance officer selection.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. And I just, I just don't want to see what happened before it happened again with 50 cards floating around.
Right. I agree with you, Mark, on that.
Other discussion?
Well, we can always revisit this if it doesn't work. Am I correct?
Yes.
It's not a problem. If it
Anything that's done can be undone.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, let's work it out again. I mean, that's the way you have to do it. You have to try on there, that's all.
Exactly right on that, Ken.
Just don't make it too big of an issue because we're wasting a lot of time on something that shouldn't take this long. That's a personal opinion, of course. But thank you.
Other discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-27.
Heard the motion by Dr. Fellner, second by Mr.
Second.
Bach. Discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Just to be different, no.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-27 is passed by a 6-1 vote. Next is resolution number 2021-8, first reading.
Sorry, I wasn't quite ready yet. Ordinance number 2021-8 entitled a resolution approving the appointment of Miranda Jones to the Tax Incentive Review Council, TIRC.
For any new council members and those people out involved in Zoom here, you want to explain what this Tax Incentive Review Committee is, Julie, briefly?
Oh, yes, it's the Tax Incentive Review Council. They meet annually and they review any enterprise zones and commercial CRAs that the cities have. So, which is the
Countywide basis.
yes, on a countywide basis. They do each entity. There's representatives there from all the school districts and the city and all the cities and yeah, so.
They're there to ensure compliance, that whatever was agreed to each year has been maintained. And so that's just to add a little bit to what Julie's saying. The Jones appointment really is follows through on the Galleon Chamber. President has been a representative on that council for many years. And so this formalizes that and allows Miranda to vote at any upcoming meeting, which I think there's one coming up. That's why it's scheduled.
I think.
Primarily as an annual meeting.
That's right.
Discussion? Do I hear a motion if there's no discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on resolution 2021-9 and proceed to the final reading.
Resolution 8-8.
28.
I'll second that.
2021-8.
Yeah. You heard the motion by Dr. Fellner. Have a second. Mr. Bodkin seconded. Roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
Did I hear?
I'll make the motion to pass resolution 2021-8.
Okay, motion by Mr. Ivy. Do we have a second?
I can motion a second.
Okay, Ms. Alt seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance, resolution 2021-8 is passed by a 7-0 vote. Moving on to ordinance or resolution number 2021-9, first reading.
Resolution number 2021-9, entitled a resolution making appointments to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3735.69A and declaring an emergency.
Okay, discussion?
This came through committee and previously, Mr. Baldinger and Ms. Clark were council members who were on the council. Mr. Baldinger has expressed an interest to continue, so that left an opening as Ms. Clark no longer wishes to serve on it. During the committee meeting, Mr. Ivy stepped up, and so that's the resolution that we have before us, is to name these two members to the CRA Housing Council.
Okay. Other discussion? Julie, again, do you want to explain to the people listening in on CRA?
This one I don't go to as much. I haven't been, but this is, they review applications, both residential and commercial, that are submitted to the city to receive tax
Commercial.
abatements. So, and the ones for commercial then would go a further step and come to council for further approval, but the any for residential would stop and they're in line with that council for approval and not come to council. So
Mary, you have anything to that?
Thomas?
Well, it's only commercial ones that go through the CRA Housing Council.
no,
Residential
residential do too.
No, they don't. They don't, Julie, because there's not a necessity of having an agreement signed with residential CRAs.
I thought they reviewed all of them. I'm sorry.
No, and I also would suggest, Mr. Ivy, I don't know how you spell your first name, but you might need an amendment there.
Oh, okay, I do. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's a minor thing, right? It would be, I mean,
You want to make sure he's appointed effectively,
Yes.
so there you
yeah,
go.
yeah, so, okay. That was my bad, so.
President, is that there is, I don't want to say an urgency, but there's a desire to get this, these appointments made and a meeting with the folks who are proposing to develop the assisted living at Hosford and Portland Way South. So that's why, that's really, the administration has picked a couple people, and so we're really repopulating this. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure when that CRA Housing Advisory Council meeting is set, but I think there's actually been a meeting date set, or there certainly will if this passes tonight.
I believe it's Thursday night, Mayor. Is that right, Gail? The 25th?
Yeah, you're right.
It's at 5:30 is our meeting.
That's 2 days away, so on my planning horizon.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to spell Mr. Ivy's first name correctly and insert a D instead of a T.
I'll second that.
Um,
A motion, Dr. Fellner?
Yeah, he made that motion, right, okay.
By Ms.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
and Mr. Ivy.
I'll say yes on this one, but abstain going forward.
You want your name spelled right? Okay, I should have just put Aaron like I was going to.
Passed by a 7-0 vote, not discussion on the
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to the final reading on resolution 2021-9.
Heard the motion by
I
Dr.
will
Fulton, second by
second that.
who seconded?
Ms. Earlston, I
Ms.
think.
Wilson,
Yeah.
okay, roll call.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
I'll abstain.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins.
Yes.
It passed by 6 votes, positive votes, and 1 abstention. Okay. Moving on to ordinance
No,
2021.
no, that was just to suspend the rules.
Okay, too many motions here.
Let me make the motion to pass resolution 2021-9.
Okay, motion by Mr. Richards, seconded by
Car-
Sir,
Mark has his hand up.
Mr. Triplett.
All right.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Richard,
yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy.
I'll abstain.
Okay, motion passed, 6 positive votes and 1 abstention. Moving on to ordinance 2021-28, first reading.
Ordinance number 2021-28, entitled ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-92, permanent 2021 appropriations by appropriating funds in the Cheshire Fund and declaring an emergency.
Heard the reading of the ordinance, discussion. This didn't go through committee, so who wants to?
Gail, do you want me to take it?
Or,
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead, Eunice.
Okay, this came up very last minute today. The last time that we had any auditor fees for Cheshire was back in 2017. So for the past several years, no money has been appropriated for those fees or expenditures until we got our tax settlement statement today. So we have to post those fees in the system. Without an appropriation, we would end the month in the negative. So we need to appropriate some funds in there to cover the current fees and any future fees that we could get before the end of the year. So this is what we estimate will cover those fees for the year. And I would request that this be an emergency so that we can get it posted prior to the end of the month so we don't close in the negative.
other questions, discussion?
Eunice, I have one question. How come they didn't charge us for a few years? What was the reason for that?
I have no idea. I literally found out about this after 3 o'clock this afternoon. So April was posting them and I did not have any time to make a call. I looked back at reports in the system to see if it was missed or where or how on our end. And like I said, I went back to 17 to see where we had money appropriated and expended in this line. So I wasn't able to dig and research it any further. And it's on our tax settlement fee. So I don't know if I'm going to have to reach out to the county auditor tomorrow, but I don't know that there's going to be much we can do to dispute that.
Okay, thanks, Eunice. I just wondered, maybe they just forgot about poor Galleon.
Okay,
Do we need to put any extra money in case they come back and say we need to pay for the previous years or no?
That should not happen, but this is extra money. This is under what we were charged. We get 2 tax settlements a year. The second one's usually a lot smaller. So just to kind of give you an idea, we're appropriating $200 and our current charge that they had on there was $60.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, other discussion?
Mr. President, as Eunice indicated, this is obviously very important. So having said that, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 2021-28 and move it to the final reading.
I'll second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Richards, seconded by Mr. Ivy. Roll call.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Ms. Alt,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner.
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules passed by 7-0 vote. Now discussion on the ordinance.
Nincs 8 óra 30 perc.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2021-28.
Heard the motion by Mr. Triplett, seconded by Mr. Bodkins. Discussion? And roll call.
Mr. Triplett,
Yes.
Mr. Bodkins,
Yes.
Ms. Earlston,
Yes.
Dr. Fellner,
Yes.
Mr. Ivy,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Ms. Alt.
Yes.
The ordinance passed by 7-0 vote. Moving on to other business. It'll be 3 weeks. One of these times there'll be 3 weeks between meetings. So we have meetings coming up. Who wants to start? Maybe
I have-
Mr. Ivy?
Mr. President, if I could, please, before we do that, I had a call today. I sent an email out to Ms. Ward at the end of the business day, so I'm sure she hasn't had time to respond. I was contacted by one of the ball coaches that use High Park Little League Field, and he was inquiring about when the city will be able to roll that field out because the kids are practicing on it and it's undulating and they're afraid they're going to take a bad hop to the chin or to the head or something.
Okay. Mary, do you have the answer to that or?
Thank you. That's, we appreciate the report. We'll get out there and do that.
Thank you.
First, they called Aaron. I guess that's a good thing. They could call us. We'd take care of it as well, but
Okay.
delivered.
Other discussion before we talk about committees? Mrs. Earlston?
Yes, I just have something kind of positive to share after some of the negativity that we've all been put through for the last few months. I received an email from Dr. Alyssa Mansfield. She is a professor of humanities and philosophy and the lead instructor for art and some other courses at Columbus State Community College. And she forwarded this email on to me that she had sent to our health department. So I'd just like to share it with all of you with her permission. So
Okay.
dear Galleon City Health Department and board members, I'm writing to commend the Galleon City Health Department on their organization and delivery of the COVID-19 immunization program. The Galleon City Health Department website was easy to navigate and effective. Other organizations have not mastered this process. However, Galleon's approach is noteworthy. The pre-registration is intuitive and they responded in a timely manner. The vaccine process from registration to injection was streamlined and professional. On the way to my appointment, I was preparing myself for a long line and the cattle call approach that I have heard about at other vaccine locations. I should have known that my hometown health department would have a more humane and organized way of managing vaccines during a pandemic. The vaccine process was professional and stress-free from start to finish. When I arrived at the location, I was impressed with the organization. The location was large enough that it felt safe and everyone was mindful of social distancing. Further, the administration of the shot was quick and delivered by an experienced professional. Thank you so much for overseeing such an exceptional health department. Sincerely, Alyssa Mansfield.
Thank you for reading that.
Wonderful.
Yes, wasn't that nice?
Very nice.
Very good. Any other discussion here before we get on committees?
Just a quick question. When I met with the mayor last week, he brought up a question I had asked a couple months ago and I was going to revisit it after some thought. Are we going to be able to meet at chambers anytime soon, whether it be committee or as a council as a whole with proper social distancing?
I think it's really up to you guys. I'm not sure what the mayor has to do with it. I attend your council meetings. So I would be in favor of it. And, but I think that's probably a consensus, unanimous or otherwise.
So
So
we got any feedback from the health director yet by chance? What her opinion is?
no, I haven't.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Will everyone
Maybe-
wear masks?
Maybe
Pres-
one more month and then maybe talk to the health director and I can reach out via email maybe and share that with everybody maybe next month in Zoom and hopefully, May will bring back to a little bit of sense of normalcy. Is that fair?
I
Mark said that he isn't gonna wear a mask, though. That mask mandate's still in place, so
Oh, I'll wear a mask. That's not a problem.
Mark said no, he won't. So I think until we're all out or the mask mandate's done, then I don't know what that's gonna look like.
Okay.
Agreed.
Any other feelings on this? Kara, I think you're right. Unless everybody wears masks, we've got a problem.
I agree with Kara as well. Thanks, Kara.
Nothing else? Okay, now anybody else? Any other business besides committee reports? Meetings? Okay, since it's 3 weeks, who wants to start? Mr. Richard?
Law and ordinance would be on Tuesday, April 6th at 7 o'clock.
Mr. Triplett?
Utilities, 7 PM on the 7th.
Mr. Ivy?
Parks and Rec, April 10th, 7 o'clock. That'd be a Wednesday.
Mrs. Earlston?
Police, fire and health will be on Thursday, the 15th.
Okay, Dr. Pilner?
Wait a minute. April 10th is a Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
How about April 14th?
14th.
That sounds even better, Julie. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, Dr. Pilner?
Yes, airport economic development on Tuesday, the 20th. Finance committee on Wednesday, the 21st, on Zoom at 7 PM.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes. Bodkins?
Mr. Bud?
We got streets on April 8th at 7 via Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Auditor Bodinger.
Yeah, the only thing I have to share tonight is we had a portfolio mature this month. It was a $400,000 portfolio. Nick Vaccaro from Meter Investments recommended reinvesting the funds in a 9-month commercial paper. The rates are currently in the range of 0.18% and 0.2%. So we went ahead and done that 9-month reinvestment per his under his advice, under his recommendation. So that's the only thing I'd like to share that with council tonight.
Law Director Palmer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to share a few comments talking with members of council, but in addition to that, really reaching out to the people that may be watching this who would not know about the information which I'm about ready to share. I'd like to share a few brief words about the Free Center project and the proposed funding plan for the Free Center. This information, as I said a minute ago, has already been shared with City Council. A few weeks ago, within 24 hours of learning of the proposed financing plan for the Free Center, the mayor and I met to discuss any questions which immediately came to mind. The process my office used to answer those questions and other questions which arose was a thorough one, which included research and also obtaining opinions from outside counsel. A week ago today, we received an opinion which indicates that while the project may well be possible, it cannot proceed in exactly the way proposed. The city administration, myself included, is currently examining options on ways to move forward. And that's what I wanted to share with you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Palmer? Or the mayor or whoever? If not, Mayor Liberty.
I really have nothing to add tonight. If there are any questions, I would say to just add on to what Thomas said, we've been working on a way to get to yes as an answer in terms of being able to build this project. I think initially there was, we cleared one hurdle And that was whether or not by using non-tax revenue, we could fund this kind of project. Where we've hit a snag, it has to do with whether or not the trust agreements that control the distribution of the freeze funds, whether the proposal meets those trust agreements. So initially, it looks like it doesn't. And then the other issue really has more to do with the Freeze Foundation and any limitations on them than the city. But our hurdle or our obstacle right now is to look at one of two options. That one would involve reopening, is probably not a legal term, but looking at the existing trust agreement, modifying that mutually with all the parties involved. And then the other approach might be a more direct city ownership development of the project. So I spent all weekend, looking around for the magic answer or the silver bullet or that pot of gold, still looking for that. But I think those people who are want to see the project through, I would hope that they wouldn't throw up their hands and feel as though this is something more than a temporary setback and the need to reformulate. So that's probably more than I had planned to say, but heck, who'd be surprised with me saying more than might have been proper. But I think I just want to convey the impression that those people who want to build the project, I really want to stay at it. We're just going to have to look at a different way to put the resources, put the money together. And so Mayor's office is up for doing that. So we'll kind of see where we go over the next several weeks. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you both for explaining that. Mayor, do you have any other comments tonight?
Getting ready I'm looking forward to the next couple of committee meetings on just about every one of the committees. But in particular, the streets committee, there's been some, additional candidates for paving. We're gonna have to talk about that, whether, and so I'm looking forward to that meeting. And then also, some of the implications on the Freeze Center project. That decision will have a little bit or a lot to bear with how we fund other freeze projects this year. Because I think from a legal point of view, we want to make sure that future funding of entities not named in the trust agreement, that we make sure that those are valid. So we have a YMCA request. We have the request from one of the baseball organizations. So we're going to have to massage that a little bit. I still want to do a major project. I hope council does too, at East Park, even though we may not be able to use their money. And the idea that the Y had is something worth discussing at Aaron's upcoming meeting, but probably not going to be in the sweet spot of eligible freeze funded projects. So.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? I don't have any other comments beyond what was said tonight. So anything else before we adjourn?
Nope.
If not, it's 8:43 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn as Mr. Triplett makes a motion?
I'd be happy to make that motion, sir.
Okay, and Mr. Bodkin seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Everybody, okay, opposed? Meeting hereby adjourned at 8:43. Thank you and see you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.